Okay, the webinar is now recording. Again, thank you very much for joining us today for StraightUp Solar's webinar on how solar helps cash flow. Okay, again, my name is Eric Schneider. I'm the Director of Business Development with StraightUp Solar. I'm pleased to be with you here. And I'm also joined by Dan Hancock, our Senior Project Developer, who will be going over our slides. Dan is a 12-year veteran of the solar industry and has been working with businesses, federal government, commercial and industrial utility scale projects all across the United States and the Caribbean. Dan will give you a little more background about himself as we get into the presentation. But first, let me talk a little bit about StraightUp Solar. StraightUp Solar was founded in 2006 by Dr. Dane Glick, who's an orthopedic surgeon. He started the company because he wanted to extend the notion of caring beyond his medical practice into the community. So in 2006, he wanted to put solar arrays on his house. And then he looked in the phone book. At that time, there were phone books. There were no certified solar installers in the St. Louis region. So Dane kind of got out the manual of the North American Boards for Certified Energy Professionals Handbook, became a solar installer, put some on his house, worked out pretty well for his own house. His neighbors thought that was pretty cool, asked him to put some arrays in their neighborhood, and got a couple guys in the truck doing one installation, two installations, year over year. Now, 14 years later, he's grown the company to 75 employees, which over 25% of them have NABCEP certification. We've done 1,400 installations all across the St. Louis region, Central Illinois, and Southern Illinois. We're really proud to be part of a national network of the Amicus Solar Cooperative, which is really important in business and commercial industrial projects, which means that we can share best practices across the nation. We have partners in every state, but also we can provide our panels and equipment at a lower price because all our Amicus Collaborative forms together as a group purchasing cooperative, which would make them the third largest solar company in the United States. So it's a great purchasing power network that we're all a part of all across the country. Specifically for StraightUp Solar, we sell the Tesla Powerwall if you're interested in some storage battery solutions. We are an REC premium installer, which allows us to extend our warranties to 25 years on those products. We do a 10-year workmanship and production warranty. And we're also really proud to have been honored to have won 14 Midwest Renewable Energy Association Group Buy programs, specifically in the St. Louis region. If you're interested in residential installations, we do the Group Buy programs for the St. Louis area called Grow Solar St. Louis and Grow Solar Metro East. We also are the sole installer for the Southern Illinois region called Solarize Southern Illinois and Central Illinois with Grow Solar Urbana Champaign. If you're interested in any of those programs on the residential side, just go to growsolar.org for more information. And finally, what I want to highlight is we are a certified B Corporation, which means that we believe that business can be a force for good. Certified B Corporation means that we have joined together with 50,000 other companies all across the world. It means that businesses can be a force for good. Certified B Corporations are evaluated by a third party called the B Labs, which evaluates how we're doing with our, how we impact the environment and how we improve our people in addition to our profitability. So again, the Certified B Corporations put people and planet above profitability. So I encourage you to vote for your wallet every single day and choose the Certified B Corporation when you're picking a product. So today's agenda, Dan Hancock will talk about the federal investment tax credit, how that's a tool to reduce your costs, talk about Missouri rebates, and then in Illinois, they have a solar renewable energy credit that also helps reduce the cost of arrays on your business. He's also going to provide a case study example of how financing tools can help you leverage solar in terms of working with the financing tool and the energy savings to really provide a cash flow into your business. We'll conclude with a highlight of a new program that's probably the first in the Midwest, a St. Louis area group buy program devoted just for businesses. And then we'll answer your questions at the end. So Dan, let me turn it over to you to start the presentation. Thanks for your time, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Eric. I appreciate the introduction. As Eric said, my name is Dan Hancock, and I've been doing this for a little over 12 years now and have worked throughout North America, as Eric said, primarily on commercial projects. I've worked quite a bit for the Department of Defense and spent a little bit of time in the Caribbean working on private island resorts. The title of the presentation was How Solar Cash Flows. And to quickly understand where we're going to go with that explanation is, if you think of solar as buying something that has a rebate. So if I buy a product and after I buy it, I snip off the coupon and mail it in and the company sends me back a rebate, I've got this price that I paid, but I didn't really pay that full price. I get some money back. Solar's a little bit like that. We call it a bifurcated capital stack. And it just means there's the price I pay, and then there's certain incentives. One of the very large incentives or money that you will receive back from solar is a dollar for dollar tax credit, or a federal investment tax credit. The chart that you see here just simply lists the declining value of that tax credit. This year, 2020, that tax credit is 26%. So that simply means that 26% of the entire solar array is available as a dollar for dollar credit against your federal tax liability. That tax credit is going to decline over time. Next year, it's going to decline to 22%, and then it will go down to 10% and stay at that limit for the foreseeable future, through 2023 at least. And it's interesting to note, I see what Eric put on here was, he also listed a residential tax credit. That tax credit is not available at all after 2021. So if you're thinking about doing this for your home, do it quickly. So the federal investment tax credit, it is calculated as a percentage of the total capital cost of the solar array. Most of the costs can be included in that. With a few exceptions, there could be some development costs that you would have to pay that aren't available for that tax credit. But really, by and large, for the vast majority of the commercial projects that this group will look at, pretty much all of the costs associated with installing the array, the equipment, the labor, the interconnection application fees I pay to the utility, the permitting, all of that can be rolled into the project costs, and you can receive your federal investment tax credit, which again, it's important to know that it's a dollar for dollar tax credit against your liability. If you don't have enough tax appetite, in other words, let's say the tax credit was $100, but you only owe $50 in taxes, then you can take that additional $50 and continue to roll that forward. If you had a really good year last year and you're in a position to file an amended tax return, you can carry that tax credit backward 1 year. It doesn't apply to operating leases or PPAs, and that's really simple because if you don't own the array, you don't get a tax credit. So if you happen to be in Illinois and you are fortunate enough with your business to be able to execute a power purchase agreement, you won't actually own the array. There'll be a third-party finance company that owns it, and those folks will take the tax credit. Here in Missouri, a lot of our commercial customers are going to look at an operating lease. And in that case, you're a lessee, and the lessor will actually own the array, and they will take the investment tax credit. Just as an aside, there are some tax advantages still, though, to leasing that array. In an operating lease, that lease payment is considered rental expense, and so the payment itself is 100% tax deductible. We mentioned that the credit does begin to phase down next year. And let's say, though, for the sake of argument, gosh, I really want to take advantage of that 26% tax credit. And you'll see shortly in a few slides how much that can impact the cash flow of a solar array. But I don't want to build it this year. I don't have enough money. The solar array costs $100, and I really only have about $10 to spend this year. How can I take advantage of that 26% tax credit? The IRS will let you do a thing called safe harbor. So you can pay a percentage of that total cost upfront this year, and you'll have up to 3 years to build that array. So plenty of time. You don't have to spend all the money this year, and you can still take advantage of that full 26% investment tax credit. Some of the other rebates or incentives that are available for the tax for a solar project are depreciation incentives. The federal government will allow you to depreciate 100% of the tax array in year one, which can really be a large part of the savings. And in fact, as I mentioned, I'm going to show just a quick illustration of how that type of depreciation can affect your business's cash flow. But it's important to note that 100% of the cost of the solar array can be depreciated on your federal taxes in year one. If that doesn't work for you, you can still use other depreciation methods. For instance, Missouri and Illinois allow you to use your modified accelerated cost recovery, and you could do that as well on your federal taxes. But again, these are really beneficial to businesses that have tax appetite. And it's important to talk through this with your accountant or your CFO and make sure that we apply the right costs so that you can take advantage of the depreciation. It's going to help a lot on your cash flow. This last bullet, the PV system, the taxable basis. So again, that's just a detail that we would work through with your accounting. You can't deduct or depreciate the entire cost of the array if you take the federal investment tax credit. You have to reduce the taxable basis of the project by 50% of the credit that you receive on the ITC. So it's just a fine detail, but it does sort of illustrate that it's important to go through all of the numbers carefully and make sure that they work for you in your particular situation. And another rebate on solar, they just keep coming, and this always amazes people. They look at the initial price of a solar array and are often taken aback a little bit by that initial cost. But after we walk through all of the different incentives and depreciation tools that are available, it becomes very, very affordable. Right now in Ameren territory, Ameren's offering you a rebate, and the rebate is 25 cents a watt. It was enacted quite a while ago. There's some different rules that they apply to that 25 cent a watt rebate. For instance, they say, I'll give you 25 cents a watt for all the solar you install up to 100,000 watts, which would be $25,000. Awesome, great, but what if I want to do an array larger than 100 kilowatts? What if I have a really big roof and I want to install as much solar as I possibly can? Ameren says, that's fine. We're going to pay you rebates all the way up to 150,000 watts. But when you exceed the 100 kW mark, we're no longer going to allow net metering. So we'll need to look carefully at your situation as to whether or not it makes sense to do that. If you happen to be a company that's always going to use 100% of the power produced by the solar array at any moment in time, then you don't care about net metering. And I think that's probably a longer discussion, and we could get into that more specifically if that's a situation you want to look at. But the point is, now you can get that 25 cents a watt if I give up net metering up to 150 kW, which is now going to offset $37,500 in cost. And that's just a check Ameren is going to send you. So we don't care if you pay taxes or not, that's a rebate you're going to get. Net metering may provide additional savings. And by the way, you can go over 150 kW. They're just going to stop paying you. Ameren is going to stop paying you that rebate money once you hit that limit. Net metering, and we'll just cover this really quickly because again, this definitely helps cash flow. If I have a solar array and in the middle of the day, I might be producing more power than my business is using. And if in the evening I'm using more power, obviously, than I produce because solar doesn't work at night very well, then what happens is Ameren takes a look at your bill and they say, you know what, you produced 10 units of energy this month and you used 9 units of energy. So you overproduced by 1 unit. We're going to give you full retail credit for all 9 units. We don't care if they went onto the grid and came back. And that 1 extra unit, if you look at this chart all the way out on the left, that's where we say unused energy is sent to the grid. That very small percentage is rebated back at a wholesale dollar amount. But everything else is a dollar for dollar credit. So in other words, and I won't belabor this too much, but let's say I produced 8 units of electricity, but I used 10. But every once in a while, I was producing electricity that I couldn't use at that moment in time. It simply will spin my meter backwards, and that electricity will flow back out onto the grid. And then again at night, when the sun goes down and I'm not producing electricity, that energy comes back into my building and turns the meter the other way. So I'm going to get a dollar for dollar credit for all of that energy, with the exception of anything I overproduce at the end of the month. I'm sure that's as clear as mud, and we can dive into that more later. If you have a specific question, we'll follow up on it. For our Illinois customers, Illinois has a different rebate. They don't have a utility rebate per se. There are some utility rebates available in Illinois for very specific cases called smart inverter rebates, and that would be more of a one-off discussion. But what they do have are solar renewable energy credits, or RECs. And a REC is simply the monetary value of the green attribute of a solar array. The green attribute, we talk about how much carbon am I offsetting. And we know with solar, I'm offsetting carbon. So that's the green attribute. What's my carbon offset? The monetary value of that attribute is honestly what somebody is willing to pay. And in Illinois, because of legislation that they passed, the state of Illinois, or the Illinois Power Authority, is willing to pay a lot of money for that green attribute. And so those RECs are available to people who build solar arrays in Illinois. They're available in different amounts depending on where you're located, whether you're buying your energy from Ameren or ComEd, or a third-party supplier that's getting their energy from Ameren or ComEd. And it depends on how large of an array that you build, but they're quite valuable. And if you're an Illinois customer, you definitely want to talk to somebody that's working in that REC market that can help you understand the cash flow of those RECs. One of the nice things about those RECs is we calculate that monetary value for the green attribute every year for 15 years, but we pay that 15 years worth of RECs up front in the first 5 years. So it really does make it affordable to do commercial solar in Illinois. There's another way, and this is going to be the final slide before we look at a cash flow, I believe. If you leverage a solar array, in other words, if I borrow money or use somebody else's money and pay interest on that money I borrow, because of the tax credits and the depreciation, I can actually put more money into my bank account than I take out over the first 5 years. Solar can significantly help with that. And we're going to show you that. And we've got a great system. I don't know if they're on the phone with us today, but one of our loaning partners is Electro Savings Credit Union, and they have a product that allows you to go either 12 or 18 months and only pay interest on the amount you borrow. And they have I want to say it's a 20-year amortization schedule on a 7-year loan. So it's a typical construction loan. And what it allows you to do is have a very low payment for the first 12 to 18 months, interest only, and then still quite a low payment for the next, all the way up through year 7. And then you'll have a balloon payment basically due at year 7, and you'll simply refinance that debt or pay it off. And this is, I don't know how, I hope this shows up clearly. It was just a screen capture. Eric, can you see this all right? Is this clear?
Yeah, it's clear to me, Dan.
So, you know, without getting into too much detail, which we could do if anyone has questions and want to, if I look at this chart and I go all the way over to the right-hand side and I look at that column that says cumulative cash flow, what this basically says is if I buy a $250,000 solar system, I'm going to put $158,827 into my bank account in year 1. So if I'm trying to build some cash reserves because of all the craziness in the world today, and I really need to watch my money and where is it going, then installing solar may be a way for you to do that. You can see that just by the Ameren PV rebate, the amount of money I'm saving on my electric bill, the ability to depreciate the solar array off of my state taxes, so I'm giving less money to Missouri, I'm keeping that in my bank account, the investment tax credit that I'm going to get directly from the federal government as a dollar-for-dollar tax credit, and the ability to depreciate it further, saving me even more tax money. So if I take all of that money and instead of giving it to the state of Missouri and giving it to the federal government, and I put it all in my own bank account for right now, I installed a solar array, and again, put about almost $159,000 into my bank account by installing solar. And then I followed this down for 5 years, and you can see that dollar amount dwindles slightly because I'm making payments against that debt. And then there'll be, like I say, a balloon payment at year 7, but tremendous cash flow even over the 25-year warranty life of the array, and positive cash flow over the entire life, depending on how I restructure that debt at year 7. So Eric, I think I'm going to turn it back over to you at that point.
Great. Thank you, Dan. I hope Dan gave you a pretty good sense of all the rebates, the incentives that are out there for businesses to install solar on their buildings here. and also the cash flow advantages for financing and how putting it all together. So thanks, Dan, for your time. By the way, Dan, this is one of a 3-part webinar series that Straight Up Solar is producing. Join us next week. Dan will return talking about how you can, nonprofits or organizations that don't have a great of a tax appetite can go and do solar on their building. So we'll be looking at operating leases, power purchase agreements, and other flexible options that businesses can use to go solar. Our third seminar, 2 weeks from today, we'll talk more specifically about the technical aspects of installing solar on your roof in terms of ground mounts, rooftop mounts, the type of equipment that is being used, and how you should site an array on your roof. So again, stay tuned to Straight Up Solar's website for more information on their events here. So I want to close with a key, very exciting program that's going to launch this week. And again, I just want to also acknowledge Andrew Linares and Tori Cheatham, who are here on the phone call here, so we can ask them questions directly via the chat about this new program called Renew STL Solar, organized by Renew Missouri and Washington University. Those two organizations came together to really address how do we increase renewable energy in the St. Louis region and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the St. Louis region, all part of kind of the overall sustainability plan for the region. This group buy program for businesses is the first of its kind that in the Midwest. At least that's what we believe. We've not seen any indication there's any other programs like that. So I want to give hats off to Renew Missouri and Washington University for kicking off this program of bringing businesses together to increase solar. So Dan Hancock and Andrew are the key point people on this program here that will provide customized solar solutions for whether you're a business, a government, a hospital, or an institution, ranging from a system size of 30 kW to 500 kW. And as more companies get involved in the program, there are rebates here. So at each level, there's maybe 1%, 2%, 3% of the cost of the array will be delivered back to you. There's a new website here at renewmissouri.org called Renew STL Solar, and Andrew Linares is the program manager. We do that a couple minutes. Andrew, if you want to unmute yourself, you can say a few words about the program here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. Excellent presentation by yourself and Dan, of course. So you can also read more about Renew STL Solar, this new program of ours, at renewstlsolar.org, or the link that you provided. Either will work. And yeah, we're very excited by this program. We are really hoping that some of the regional defining institutions decide to join us here. We'd like municipalities to be considering putting solar on their buildings. We'd like, the city of St. Louis, the St. Louis County. We'd also like, some of the large corporate customers in our area to be looking at this. Obviously, we're going to be leading with the financial argument on things. We want to be able to save businesses money and make things pencil in terms of providing more revenue for folks. But also, we feel like there are incredible PR benefits here. To be a part of a new program like this is going to be good exposure for your business. This is going to be a great way to meet your organization's sustainability goals. And, this is a way to support the growing solar workforce in the St. Louis region. And we really just want this program to have a sense of we're working together to revitalize the St. Louis area. The phrase "better together" has various meanings over the last few years, but that's the sentiment we want to have here. Is the more people, the more institutions, corporations, municipalities are in this program, the cheaper it is going to be for everybody, and the more we're going to be able to positively influence the region. So thanks for having me. I'm happy to take any questions. You guys can reach out to me by email or with whatever time we have left here.
Great, thank you, Andrew. I think we have one more slide left just to conclude. We have Dan Hancock's contact information. Here we go. Feel free to reach Dan if this kind of piqued your interest of how commercial businesses can go solar and all the different options and incentives. Feel free to give Dan a call or